Welcome back to Uncommon Peasant. Today we're going to be going over all of the uncommons in the newly released Hobbit set. Just in alphabetical order, just talk about how they work in Peasant Cube, or maybe there are other aspects in other formats of Magic. So first up is Bard the Bowman. It is a 3-mana 1/3 reach. When you draw your second card each turn, +1/+1 counter on target creature, and it gains lifelink until end of turn. This can be a good card if your cube supports a draw 2 archetype, which is becoming more and more common as they add more to that. But as itself, as a standalone card, it maybe isn't the best. It's okay, it's fine, but it's nothing that's gonna absolutely blow your mind. Next is Beorn's Hospitality. It's basically another Ride the Shoe Puff from the Final Fantasy set. 2 mana, landfall, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and you can pay 7 mana to make it into a bear creature with power and toughness equal to the number of land you control. It can be a good support piece for +1/+1 counters, maybe even a bear sub-theme if you have that now, bear support from the set. But all in all, it's a fine card, nothing crazy, but it can be a workhorse. Next up is Bifur, Melodic Rider. 6 mana, 4/5 with Storied. When it enters or attacks, put a +1 counter on target creature, and as long as you have that enduring story, your dwarf abilities trigger twice. As a standalone card, definitely I saw in the pre-release it can be good. It basically enters as a 5/6 and grows as it attacks. If your cube supports dwarves, it definitely has added bonus there, and there are always more legendaries showing up as more Universes Beyond sets happen. So I think it can be a pretty good card, and with the hybrid mana, makes it very flexible to play. Next is Bilbo Luckwearer. 2 mana, 1/1, can't be blocked, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and discard a card. And it also has a 5 mana adventure to let you exchange control of 2 target non-land permanents that share a card type. This is basically Looter Liqueur with a little bit of upside. That adventure isn't anything crazy, but the ability to maybe exchange something of yours like a token for your opponent's threat can be pretty good in the right situation. And at the base level, that Looter Liqueur effect of drawing, discarding a card on an unblockable 2 mana creature is pretty good. Next is Bofur, Reliable Guardian. 1 mana, 1/1 lifelink with a 2 mana adventure that gives a target artifact or creature you control hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. I feel like this is a great card. That ability to, at instant speed for 2 mana, save any of your things can be very strong. Can be a combat trick even, and being attached to a 1/1 with lifelink is a pretty good rate for 1 mana. Next is Bolg of the North. 5 mana for a 5/5 when it enters. You fling a creature at an opponent's creature, and if excess damage is dealt, you get to amass Goblins X, where X is the difference. It's fine. If your cube supports goblins, it has that added benefit. Maybe also +1 counters is a theme. I don't think it's anything to write home about, but it is fine as a 5 mana top of the curve. Next is Bomber, Gentle Dreamer. 3 mana for a 5/3 with Storied, and if you have that enduring story, he does actually untap. Otherwise, he doesn't untap. It's a decent rate for 3 mana, but that 3 toughness can definitely be an issue. Very common to get killed through Lightning Strike, Lightning Bolt, etc. Storage shouldn't be too hard to fill with artifacts, legendaries galore. It's fine. I don't think it's anything crazy, though. Bothersome Noisemaker is next, though, and I think this is an incredible card. It's basically a young pyromancer that helps goblins and +1 counters. So for 2 mana, you get a 2/2, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you amass goblins 1. That really will add up over time. It's great for spell slingers, great for artifacts even, as any non-creature spell, enchantments maybe, and that +1 counter and goblin synergy makes it incredible. Next is Burn, Tree and Fern. It's 4 mana Saga. That in the first chapter deals 6 damage, second chapter blows up an artifact, and then third and fourth chapter adds a red mana. It can easily be a 2-for-1 hitting a creature and then an artifact. That little extra mana at the point that you get it isn't going to do anything crazy. You're already going to have a ton of mana by that point in the game. But as a 2-for-1, and especially in cubes that care about maybe artifacts or sagas, it can definitely do some good work. Next is Celebrate the Mountain King. 4 mana, when it enters, you exile a non-land permanent for each of your opponents until it leaves the battlefield, and when it enters, you recruit. So this is our first instance of recruit. It means that you draw a card, then discard a card, and if you discard a non-land card, you get a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. This is pretty good value. It's an O-ring that also comes with either a loot or a loot and a dude. You can set up graveyard stuff with that discard, or even the draw 2 synergies with the draw. That card selection is great, and in cubes where it cares about multiplayer, maybe you have a commander cube, or even just a cube that is like Conspiracy that cares about multiplayer, it has that extra value and can be very good. 4 mana is a little pricey for this effect normally, but the added utility definitely adds to that. Next is Dane, Lord of the Iron Hills. 2 mana for a 2/2 Vigilance with Storied, and as long as you have that Enduring Story, creatures can't attack you unless the controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. I'm kind of torn on this. It is pretty good rate as a 2 mana 2/2 Vigilance. The Storied ability can be good. It's like a mini Propaganda or Ghostly Prison if you have that Enduring Story, but it feels like it's kind of at conflict with itself, where the 2 mana 2/2 Vigilance wants to be attacking and doing things and maybe in a more aggressive deck, and in that deck you wouldn't really care about Ghostly Prisoning your opponent, but maybe in those right control decks or slower mid-range decks that want that, it could be really good. And in cubes where you do support an artifact, saga, or legendary theme, you're going to have that storied every time for sure. Next is Desolation Prowler, 2 mana 2/2, where you can pay 2 life and give it +2/+2 on the turn, and only activate this once each turn. It's Putrid Leech without the green, which means it's more flexible. That was historically a really good card. I think this one falls in a similar place. These days, with power creep, it's not as strong as it could have been, but effectively being a 2 mana 4/4 that you have to pay 2 life every turn can be good in aggressive black decks, and that pay 2 life maybe has synergies in decks that care about life loss or lower life total. All in all, it's a good card. Nothing crazy again, but can be a pretty good aggressive beater. Next is Down to Goblin Town, a 3 mana saga that on the first chapter, you thought sees your opponent. They reveal their hand, you discard a non-land card from it. Second chapter, you mass Goblins 1, and then third and fourth, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. It's a lot for 3 mana, but I feel like this whole is not equal to the sum of its parts here. The best part is definitely that discard, but for 3 mana, that's a bit expensive. But think of it as a 3 mana 1/1 that's going to make your opponent discard a card. The draining is good, but nothing crazy. I feel like it's just too slow for what it does, but maybe in a cube that likes the enchantment or the goblins, it could do some work. Next is Dreaded Backcloud, 5 mana for a 4/2 flying Death Touch, but it costs 3 less to cast if a creature died this turn. This is a lot like an older card, Bonepicker Vulture, but in that case, that was a 4 mana 3/2, I believe, that cost 3 less, so basically a 1 mana flyer instead of 2. That 2 mana is a big difference, and that 2 toughness is pretty easy to kill. It'll pretty much die to anything, but Flying Death Touch does make it a great blocker, and in a deck that can reliably play it on maybe turn 3 as you double spell, kill a thing, and then play this as a big threat, can hold off stuff and begin for a good chunk of damage before it eventually gets outpaced by bigger creatures. But all in all, it's a fine card. Next up is Dwarven Matic. 2 mana equipment. When it enters, attach it to a dwarf you control, and the equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has ward 1, and then equip of 3. The equip cost is pretty expensive on this. I think if your cube supports dwarves, it could be pretty good. That +2/+2 and ward 1 is great if you do it for only 2 mana. But generally, I think this is going to be equipped for 3, and that's too expensive and probably isn't good enough for most cubes. Next up is Dwarven Mauler, 1 mana 2/1, and equip abilities you activate the target of this creature cost 2 less to cast. 2 less to activate. It's a Jackal Pup, 1 mana 2/1, that's great stats for an aggressive red creature, and if your cube happens to care about equipment, or just even has an equipment archetype, this gets that much more value. I think it's pretty good. Most of the time it's going to be just a 1 mana 2/1 where that equip ability doesn't really do much, but those are good stats at least, and if your cube can support it, I think it's a great card. Next is Eagle of the Great Shelf, 5 mana 2/5 flyer, and whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other creature you control. It's a lot of mana, and it relies on other creatures you have to buff it. On an empty board, it's just going to be that 5 mana 2/5 flyer, which isn't great. I mean, the ceiling on it is really high. You probably have an average of 2 to 3 other creatures on board in the average game, which means it can attack as a 4 or 5 power flyer. But for 5 mana, that's not crazy. We already have better air elementals or things that are going to do better for that. I think the ceiling's high, but the floor is really low, making it way too risky and probably a little too expensive for most cubes. Next up, however, is Eagle's Rescue, a 4 mana aura that gives +2/+2 in flying, and you can also pay 4 mana to return it from your graveyard attached to a creature with power 1 or less. This is generally a great card if your cube supports auras. 4 mana for +2 and flying is a pretty good rate. We've seen better is like an Innistrad aura that was only 2 mana that gave +2 and flying, but that added utility of returning it for 4 mana to a creature with power 1 or less makes it pretty good. I think if your cube cares about auras or enchantments, it's probably a shoo-in. The hybrid mana makes it really flexible to what deck you play it in. And all in all, it's a pretty good card, maybe a tad overcosted, but still a pretty decent card. Next up is Elven Raft Steerer. 3 mana for a 3/2 with landfall. When that land enters, you can either tap a creature your opponent controls or untap a creature you control. It's effectively at baseline a 3 mana 3/2 Vigilance, being able to untap itself, but it can also take out blockers your opponent has, making it pretty good utility in that way. At baseline, I think if your cube supports elves or landfall, it can be decent, but that 2 toughness is pretty tough to defend at 3 mana. And generally, if you're only landfalling that once per turn, it's not contributing that much to your board. So it's a fine card, but I don't think it's going to blow you away really most of the time. Next up is Fearsome Goblin Pair, a 3 mana 1/1, and when it dies, you amass goblins 4. Think of it as like a Doom Traveler for 3 mana that's going to give you a 4/4 when it dies. In cubes that care about goblins, that's probably going to be pretty decent. That 3 mana is kind of expensive, but the hybrid mana does help. And Amass Goblins 4 is a lot, giving you that 4/4. I think it's kind of a toss-up for this one, but if your cube supports +1 counters, armies, or goblins, it may have a place in your cube. Next up is Galleon, Elven King's Butler, 4 mana 4/4, and whenever he attacks, you choose up to one other target creature you control. Its base power and toughness become equal to Galleon's power and toughness until end of turn. 4 mana 4/4 is a decent rate. The legendary certainly can be an upside if your cube cares about legendary, but the attacking and making a base power and toughness equal to his, I think is only really good if you support a +1 counter theme, which are pretty common, but only giving that boost to base power at floor, making it a 4/4 isn't that great. There are probably better versions of this effect, and in fact I think there was a card from Strixhaven that did the same thing, but maybe a little bit better. But overall, I don't think this is a great card for your cube. Next is Gandalf Sparkstarter, a 6 mana 4/3 reach. When it enters, he deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures. This is kind of a bigger Flametongue Kavu. The fact that it can be divided makes it better utility-wise, and that reach certainly is nothing to scoff at. But that 3 toughness is, I think, what kills it. At 6 mana with 3 toughness, it's going to die to everything. And I don't think the 3 damage divided as you choose makes up for that high cost either. It's decent, but I don't think it's really going to do much or play very well in cube. Next is Gathering Darkness, 4 mana, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and amass goblins 3. This is basically a beefier goblin gravedigger, as a basically 3/3 that's going to get back a creature from your graveyard. I think it's pretty good, especially if your cube supports goblins or +1 counters, and it being a sorcery means you're going to cast it, return that, and get that before you get the creature, which has its utility, harder to kill it and stop it from doing its thing, which I guess Gravedigger's effect would do anyways, but still, overall, slightly stronger Gravedigger. If you care about the creature type with +1 counters, I think it definitely has a home. Next up is Gloin the Mighty, as a 4 mana 4/3 at the beginning of your first main phase, add 2 red mana, and it has an adventure of, for 3 mana, deal 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls. Gloin himself is pretty great. 4 mana 4/3 is fine, but ramping you that 2 mana, if he survives, you're getting to 7 mana on turn 5, which is fantastic to either ramp into a big threat or double spell maybe a 3-drop and a 4-drop. And that adventure is pretty situational, but I think when it comes to killing tokens or weenies, it has enough utility, it's probably pretty good. This is another one that's kind of a toss-up. I think if your cube likes the effect, definitely play it. It's not going to be for every cube, but I think it's definitely strong enough to have merit. Next is Gnashing of Teeth, 3 mana sorcery. Target creature gets -5/-5 till end of turn, and if that creature would die, you exile it instead, or creatures target player controls get -1/-1 till end of turn. I think sorcery speed is what kills this card. It could be pretty good as that -5 kill spell that exiles, or a board-wide -1 to your opponent, but the sorcery speed makes it just so slow that most of the time, your opponent's either going to have an answer, it's going to be too slow that you're not going to be able to kill the creature in time. It's just not reactionary enough for what you want for that effect. It's fine. I just think like Obnixilis' Cruelty, a common from several years ago, is probably just better than this as its instant speed. Next is Gollum the Abandoned, 2 mana for a 2/2, can't block. When he enters, he exiles up to 1 target card from an opponent's graveyard, and each opponent loses 2 life. And then you can pay 2 mana and sack an artifact or creature to return it from your graveyard to hand. This proved to be incredible at the pre-release, and I think similarly, it's going to be pretty good in Pauper Cube. The can't block is definitely a downside, but that enter ability is Graveyard Hate, it's a shock to the face, and it can recur itself, which if your cube cares about those aristocrats, sacrifice, or otherwise death-related decks, it's going to be great. And at base level, it is a Grizzly Bear stats, which is pretty good in black. Overall, great card. I love it. Next is Great Ugly Looking Goblin, which besides the hilarious name, is a 6 mana 4/4. Each creature you control with a +1 counter on it has Menace, and it has an adventure for 2 mana to amass goblins too. The adventure is pretty good rate. 2 mana for a 2/2. It's a goblin, it has counters, so if your cube cares about that, wonderful. I just think the main creature itself is where it falls short as a 6 mana 4/4. It's definitely overcosted. We could see this effect for 4 or 5 mana, I think, easily. It's fine, and if your cube cares about goblins or counters, probably okay. I just think you could probably play better cards than it. Hilarious name, though. Next is Iron Hills Blacksmith, a 2 mana 1/1 double strike, and when it enters, you create a colorless equipment artifact token named Axe, with equipped creature gets +1/+0 and equip 2. This card is incredible. It's an upgraded version of an old card, Fencing Ace, that was just a 2 mana 1/1 double striker. There was also a creature in the most recent Strixhaven set that had a prepared spell that was very similar to this, but I think this one is ultimately better because that equipment stays around, you can move it around, put it on creatures to give it a buff, and on itself as either a 2 mana 1/1 double strike or maybe even a 4 mana 2/1 double strike. It's a pretty good rate, it attacks well, it blocks well, 2 cards for 2 mana. What else do you want? Like, it's fantastic, I think. Next is Key to the Side Door, a 1 mana artifact that for 2 mana you tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn, and 1 mana tap, discard a legendary card with the same name as a legendary permanent you control to draw 2 cards. Most of the time Cube is singleton, which I think makes that second ability nil, like it's not going to do anything, and that first ability is a bit overcosted for what we've already seen for effects that can do that. It's fine if your cube cares about a lot of same name legendary creatures, like sure, that's awesome, it kind of gives them grandeur, you can discard them, draw some new cards, but I think generally you're just going to have better artifacts for that cost and effect. Next up is Lake Town Mariners. For 6 mana, it's a 6/5 Vigilance Ward 2, and it has an adventure for 4 mana that exiles 2 target creatures and or land you control and returns them to the battlefield under their owner's control. At base level, a 6 mana 6/5 Vigilance Ward 2 is great for blue. It's a top end of your curve, it's going to hit hard, it's going to be able to block, has that Ward 2 for protection. I think it'd be great even if it didn't have the adventure, if maybe a little vanilla, but that adventure is really what brings it home. The ability to flicker 2 creatures, get their effects, or even flicker 2 lands, which is something we don't see very often, to reuse your landfall abilities, at instant speed, makes this an incredible card, and I think we'll see a lot of play in Peasant Cube. Next up is Lake Town Toymaker. 4 mana, you get a 3/4, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you draw 2 or more cards this turn, another target creature you control gets +3/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. 4 mana 3/4, not the best stats, it's fine. Notably, its effect is another target creature. The first strike is great, and +3/+0 is nothing to sneeze at, but I think the other target creature needing to be targeted, and then you can draw 2 or more cards to get that effect, makes it maybe a little too situational, a little too clunky. If your cube supports that archetype of draw 2, maybe it has a home. It is a human for what it's worth, but I generally don't think this is a great card for cube. Next is Large Bear. 5 mana for a 5/5 Reach, Trample, Haste. Simple as that. It is a card from Ixalan that was a 5 mana red dinosaur that was basically the same thing, a 5 mana 5/5 Trample, Haste. This also has Reach. The hybrid mana makes it you can play it in different decks with black or green. And I think all in all, it's a fantastic card. It's going to be your top end, it's going to hit hard, it's going to block well, it has that utility. I think it's just an all-around great card, and if your cube can support it, I say play it. Next is Masters Counselors. For 2 mana, you get a 1/3 Vigilance, and it gets +2/+0 for each graveyard with 7 or more cards in it, and then whenever you draw your second card each turn, target player mills 3 cards. If your cube cares about the graveyard, or you have a decent mill strategy in there, it's easily going to be a 2 mana 3/3, or even a 2 mana 5/3 if you need, with Vigilance, and that draw 2 ability is fine to make a player mill 3 cards. I think if your cube supports that draw 2 archetype, could be pretty good. If your cube cares about graveyards, could be good. I just think it might be a little too situational for what you want, and as a baseline 2-mana 1/3 vigilance, it's not that great. But again, flavor to taste, see what works in your cube. Next up is Mirkwood Pathmaker, a 3-mana star with power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. This is a lot like a Tree Folk from the core set 2012 that was the same effect, but it also had hexproof, and it was rare. I think the loss of hexproof there is a big deal. It is a big body, and it grows over the game, but it has no keywords to make it get that damage through, or to help block, or protect itself. So I think, honestly, it's not going to be that great of a card. It's pretty vanilla, but it is a cool effect, and it's going to grow over time, so maybe in the right land-based cube, but otherwise, I don't think it's going to see much play. Next is Misty Mountains Raider, 5-mana 4/4, that when you attack, amass goblins 2. At first, I didn't think this would be that great, but after seeing it in the pre-release, I think it may have some legs. That whenever you attack is when you attack with anything. So you could get in with a token, you could get in with a little flyer, anything to start amassing those goblins. And that is going to build up over time. It is also a goblin itself, and a 5-mana 4/4 isn't awesome, but it's still pretty big. If your cube, again, as I said many times, cares about goblins or counters, I'd give this card a look. Otherwise, it's probably not too exciting for your cube, but again, I could be wrong. It ended up playing a lot better than I thought it would. Next up is Nasty Little Rabbit, a 1-mana 1/2 with Ferocious. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, put a +1 counter on this creature. We've seen similar cards to this before, but usually at 2 mana, and so putting this at 1 mana is fantastic. Getting that creature with power 4 or greater in green is not usually that difficult, and if you put equipment or auras on this, or other counters, it's going to even count for itself until it can get enough counters that it will just trigger itself. Once you get 3 counters on this, it's going to see itself for Ferocious and just keep building. For 1 mana, I think that's a great investment, and it's a great card, and with a pretty fun name to boot. Wonderful card. Next is Night Howl Pursuer, a 1-mana 1/1 menace, and with Ferocious, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, when it attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's a little harder to get to that power 4 or greater in black, I think, than it would be in green. But baseline attacking as a 1/1 menace isn't terrible, and the off chance of it being a 3/3 menace makes it pretty decent. I think I'm going to have to play this card to see if it's going to be any good. I think it may be decent, but again, we're just going to have to see, and that menace does do a lot of heavy lifting here. Next is Old Fat Spider. 6 mana for a 6/7 reach. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and whenever the creature becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, draw a card. So, pretty typical for what we've seen for big green fatties. Just a big creature, 6 mana, 6/7 reach. That can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less is pretty good. Means it can get through without tokens or small creatures stopping it, which definitely helps. I would love if it had trample, but that definitely helps a lot. And then the ability to draw you a card when it's targeted means it's at least going to replace itself if it gets a kill spell to it, which is pretty good. I think there's an old Tree Folk that's pretty similar to this that also had Vigilance that I think may be slightly better, but I think this may be a pretty good top end for green in Cube, in Peasant Cube specifically. There may be better 6-drops, but I think it's pretty decent for what it does. Next up is Old Fat Spider Can't See Me. A 3-mana saga. First chapter, target creature you control gains hexproof as long as you control this saga. 2 is prevent all damage that will be dealt by up to 1 target creature for as long as you control the saga. And then 3 and 4 draw a card. I honestly think this card might just be too slow for its effect. I mean, looking at all the abilities, 3 mana to draw 2 cards, it's divination, which isn't terrible, and protecting one of your creatures for 3 turns, and stopping an opponent's creature from dealing damage for what's probably 2 turns isn't terrible, but I think it might just be a little too situational most of the time. If your cube supports enchantments or sagas, probably give this a look, but I think you may have better cards for 3 mana that do similar things. Next is Ravenhill Flock, a 4-mana 1/2 flyer, and whenever you draw a card, put a +1 counter on this creature. The ceiling on this card is super high. It's every time you draw a card that it gets a counter, which means it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing over the course of the game, and that flying means you're going to get that damage through. I just think that at 4 mana, it might be a little too expensive and might be a little too late at that point to try to, keep growing it and drawing and playing through the game and hitting your opponent with it. Because, I mean, you're going to play it for 4 mana, it has 2 toughness, all your opponent has to do is shock it, and it's gone. I just think it's a little overcosted. Maybe if some of the stats were tweaked, or maybe it was a little less expensive, it could be better. Just not a great card, I think, overall. Probably good in draft, though, for if you're drafting the set. Next is Sylvan Reveler. 4 mana and green-blue for a 3/2 that when it enters, you draw a card, then discard a card. And if you discard a land card that way, put it from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped, and then landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you can pay 3. And if you do, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I'm pretty torn on this card. It can be pretty good as a 4 mana 3/2 that kind of draws you a card and ramps you, which is fine. It's kind of like a little bit of a solemn simulacrum that way. But the landfall you have to pay 3 mana to be able to return a card. It is repeatable, which is good. It's like an Ewit you can keep using over and over again. But I think the mana cost on this for both its landfall and itself might just be a little too expensive, but I could be wrong. If your cube supports a green-blue landfall theme, it probably is pretty good, and it is an elf for when that matters. But overall, I think it might just be a little too expensive. Next up is Snow Slope Hunter. 3 mana for a 2/3 goblin that you can sacrifice another creature or artifact to exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn and activate only once during your turn and only once each turn. It's that last sentence that really puts a limitation on this. I think the ability to sacrifice either a creature or an artifact makes this very flexible, and you can play that card until the end of your next turn, which adds more time. It's pretty much like drawing a card at that point. I think it's fine. A 3 mana 2/3 isn't the best stats in the world, but the ability to have that repeatable card advantage could be pretty good. And again, if your cube supports goblins, it's a goblin for what that matters. And maybe in the right red-black sacrifice theme, it could be pretty decent. Next up is Sound the Trumpets. 3 mana, counter target spell. If that spell's mana value is 2 or less, recruit, which is draw a card, discard a card, and if you discard a non-land card, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. It's cancel with the set mechanic. I don't think it's that much better than a lot of other effects we've seen. Generally, you're going to want like a dissipate that just exiles the spell. The recruit can add some good value and give you a dude, but I think at 3 mana to counter a spell, you're going to want a little more value than that. I could be wrong. If recruit turns out to be really good, it's kind of like connive, then maybe this is a fantastic card, but I think it may just be a little too expensive for not enough value. Next is Stone by Sunlight. 2 mana, choose one at instant speed, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, or until end of turn, target creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types and gains indestructible. We've seen effects like this before for 2 mana. It's kind of fun that it makes it an artifact in addition to its other types. When that could matter, it could be fun. It's nothing crazy. It's a reprisal effect where you destroy a creature with power 4 or greater, and the extra effects is pretty situational. But I do think it may have merit and be pretty good. I think if your cube likes this, play it. It could do some good work. Flexibility is always great, but it's nothing, super crazy. Next is the Black Arrow. For 3 mana, it's legendary equipment with Flash. When it enters, it deals 1 damage to any target, and if a dragon is dealt damage this way, destroy it. And then equip 1, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 in reach. The equip cost there is nice and low for +1/+1 in reach. The Flash is also nice. The 1 damage generally is just going to ping something. You're not going to see a dragon that often. I think it's a little too expensive for that fact. But if your cube happens to have a lot of dragons in it, maybe it's a Peasant Tarkir Dragonstorm cube with extra fun stuff. Yeah, it can just straight up kill a dragon and then be equipment that stays around and does pretty good. But overall, I think it's just a little too expensive for what it gives you. Next is the Chief Warg, a 4 mana 3/3 with Menace and Ferocious. Whenever you attack while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card and lose a life. I think this opens up the Ferocious theme in green-black as definitely an archetype. The Menace is great here. The 4 mana 3/3 maybe a little too expensive for the stats, but notably, like some of the previous cards, it is when you attack, not just when it attacks. So you can attack with your little flyer or something else to draw that card, lose life. Repeatable draw is always good. It might just be a mana too expensive on this one, but I could be wrong, and it opens up a new draft archetype in those color combinations. So could be decent, could go either way. Next is the Mountain King's Return. For 3 mana, it's a saga that on chapter 1 you recruit. Chapter 2, you return a creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. In Chapter 3, put a +1 counter on up to 1 target creature. So the play pattern here that it wants you to do is draw a card, discard a 3 mana value creature, get a soldier, next turn bring back that creature, and then finally put a +1 counter on that creature. It's a pretty good play pattern when it works out. You're getting a lot of value from that. I don't think it's always going to be that way. And when it doesn't work out that well, it's not that much value. And on that second chapter, if you don't have a creature in your yard, it's going to feel really bad because you're basically just going to draw a card, discard a card, and put a 1/1 counter on a creature. Maybe if your cube supports sagas or enchantments, it could be pretty good there. I think it's just situational. I don't know. I want to test it and see because I think it has a really high ceiling for what you pay for it. But the floor is pretty low and a little scary. Next is Thorn Oakenshield, a 2-mana white-red 3/2 with trample, and storied, as long as you have an enduring story, artifacts, and creatures you control have Ward 1. I think this card is incredible. As a 2-mana 3/2 trample, that's already great aggressive stats. That storied ability is not hard to meet most of the time with how many legendaries they're printing and how many things are artifacts. Sagas maybe less so, but I think storied's pretty easy to meet most of the time. And giving everything Ward 1, which includes your creatures and your artifacts, I mean, it's great on an Unsettled Mariner, a similar, but definitely a lot better card than this. But in Peasant Cube, I think this card is incredible. It's aggressive, it's going to protect your stuff, it's everything you want in white-red. Next is Thranduil's Decree. 6 mana, counter a spell. If a permanent spell is countered, you exile it, and you can play it for free for as long as it remains exiled. I think this card is just way too expensive. You're never going to want to pay 6 mana to counter something. At that point in the game, sure, maybe you happen to counter their bomb, and then you get to play it. Sure, the ceiling's pretty high in that way, but I think most of the time you're going to counter maybe a 3-drop creature or a spell. It's not going to be anything crazy, and it's only a permanent that you get to play for free. So it's not going to count if it's those instants or sorceries or etc. I don't think it's good. It just seems way too expensive. I wouldn't play it. Next is Thranduil. Thranduil Sindarin Liege. 4 mana for a green-blue 2/3. With other elves you control get +1/+1. And landfall, whenever a land you control enters, create a 1/1 elf. And it has an adventure. For 3 mana, mill 4 cards, and put up to 2 land cards from among them into your hand. I think this card is really good. I was a little hesitant at first, but after seeing it plays really well. That adventure kind of plays like a divination. Sure, it only gets back the lands, but it mills some cards too, which is good for when you care about graveyard. And those lands are going to help you hit your land drops and help those landfall decks in that way too. Additionally, because it gives all elves +1/+1, base level you're just making 2/2s every time you landfall, and if your cube cares about elves, that's just an extra bonus. I think this card's pretty good. It might be just a mana too expensive for what it does, but I think the added utility and options and the buff and the elves and everything it does add up to a pretty good card. Next up is Thrower's Map. 2 mana for a legendary artifact. When it enters, you search for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library, and then you can, for 2 mana, tap it, draw, and discard a card. It's kind of like a side grade to Collector's Vault, which just let you pay some mana, tap, draw, discard, and then create a treasure token. I think the lack of the treasure token there is definitely a loss, but getting you that basic land lets you hit that land drop or even hit your colors if you're struggling for fixing, maybe even splash a color in your deck too. I think it's a pretty good card. I think it has a lot of utility and it's going to help over time. The discard helps graveyard decks. At the very least, that card filtering is going to be great in the late game. I think it may be better than it first looks like, but overall, I think it's a pretty decent card. Getting into the last little bit here, home stretch. Next up is Troll Negotiations. 4 mana for a sorcery. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, and then it fights target creature an opponent controls. We've seen this effect before for 4 mana. I think we've even seen it with only 1 green pip instead of 2. It's fine, it's expensive. I think there's a lot better removal spells in green, and most of the time you're going to want it to be a bite, where it just deals the damage, instead of a fight, where they deal damage to each other. So I think generally you don't want to play this. It's a fun card, fun scene from The Hobbit, I love it, but generally I just don't think you want to play it. Next up is Troop of Ponies, a 2 mana colorless horse that's a 2/1, and you can pay 2 mana to sack it, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put 1 on the battlefield tapped, and the other in your hand, then shuffle. This card is really interesting to me. It's basically a Burnished Heart that instead of an Explosive Vegetation, it gives you a Cultivate. I think the less mana that you pay for this makes it a lot better. A 2 mana 2/1 isn't crazy good. It's fine, but at least it's on rate for 2 mana, at least having 2 power. And that tap 2 and tap it to get a cultivate is pretty good, especially in colorless. I'm really interested to see what this can do. It at the very least ramps or fixes. I think it's a pretty good card. I really am curious to see how it plays, and I want to play it in my cube to see for sure. It definitely is a colorless piece, but we'll just have to wait and see. It could be fantastic as a colorless cultivate. Next is Wilderland Scrounger. 5 mana for a 3/6 with Ferocious. Whenever it attacks, while you control the creature with power 4 or greater, put a +1 counter on each creature you control. That +1 counter on each creature you control is a fantastic ability, and notably it only needs 1 extra power to trigger that itself. And say if it was a +1 counter, then you're attacking with a 4/7 that's going to grow itself and your board every turn. The one downside, I think, is that it's 5 mana for a 3/6, which isn't the best, and 5 mana is kind of slow. And it does have to itself attack, unlike some of the other cards we've seen, which means it's pretty slow. You have to wait a whole turn cycle to get back and attack with it. I think it could be an okay top end if you support +1 counters, maybe even wolves, but I think it's just a little too slow for what you want to do in Peasant Cube. Last card, we've got Woodland Weave Master. For 2 mana, it's a 1/2 with Vigilance. Whenever another elf you control enters, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is its power, and spend it only to cast elves or activate elf abilities. If your cube supports elves, I think this is a shoe-in. It's a 2 mana 1/2 Vigilance. It's going to tap for mana. It's pretty good in that respect at base level. And if you play any other elf, I mean, it's easily going to be a 2 mana 2/3 Vigilance that taps for 2, which is fantastic rate for 2 mana. I just think the clinch there is that it has to be an elf spell or elf source of ability that you're using it for. Ultimately, again, if your cube supports elves, which I'm sure a lot of them do, it's great. Otherwise, I don't think you'd want to play it, really. That was my Peasant Uncommon review for the Hobbit. I think there's a lot of really cool cards in here, a lot of them that I'm really excited to try in my cube. Definitely some cards that aren't as good, but I mean, that's the expected. Cards are made for a lot of cards are made for the draft format and not just for cube or standard or constructed or commander. But overall, really cool set, some really cool new area they paved into. And I'm excited to see what these cards can do. If you have any thoughts about this, leave a comment. I mean, do the usual like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next time on Uncommon Peasant.